Okay. So welcome everybody to our next Conversations with Designers. This is Matt Elbert. I get all like, I'm like, I remember when you weren't small, but you were a little baby designer. Like, it seems like yesterday to me, but it was a million years ago. So hello, Matt.
Hello, I'm excited to talk to y'all. Yeah, you remember me when I had less wrinkles and was younger.
No, we all put on the touch-up appearance. There are no wrinkles in Zoom. You know this.
Right.
You graduated in 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Okay, yeah. And just to update everybody, I know that most people who are here in the Zoom room out there are from A-State, but there might be others listening to this later. At that time, you got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in digital design, but at that time, the degree had one class different, and you took both the classes anyways. Like, you still took package design, right? Or did you not take
twice, actually?
Nice. Yes, that was the best class. We don't have package design anymore. We're going to bring it back.
Oh,
but I know, right? But digital design is it's a vastly different degree now. It's pretty much all of our graphic design students do take like interaction design, and then type and layout's the same. I'm almost done explaining, but the vast majority of it now is Swift coding. So,
okay.
But I mean, all of it though is user experience and stuff, which let's start out with that, since you are a senior product designer for this shabby place called Amazon. After you did some time with this place I've heard of called Walmart and a whole bunch of places in between. So what the heck do you do for Amazon?
So the space that I work in is called Access Points, and it's probably going to be a little bit less familiar with us if we're all saying we're located in the South here, because it's primarily a lot of Walmart stuff. But what I work on is specifically the Amazon lockers and Amazon counter program. So if you go into like a Whole Foods, you might see a locker in there that's based on Amazon, and you can ship your packages to those places, and they live within that locker. So or they can go, you can walk up to like the counter, like the sales associate checking people out and say, hey, I have a package here. So anything that is related to you literally shopping on the app and shipping it to that, like what does that whole shopping CX look like? And when I say CX, I mean customer experience. What does that look like? That's what I design. And then there's the other side of it for the, the users that are saying, okay, I want to have a locker at my 7-Eleven. And so the behind the scenes software of like, how are they tracking their performance of their location, and how are they managing their invoices for being a part of the program? So it's like all of that side of it, as well as, what we call the counter app. So the sales associate that is at the store, the driver comes into the store, drops package off, that interaction, they use an app to do all of that. So basically that full gambit of that kind of ecosystem is what I work on right now.
So that's so crazy, because I'll even admit, when you first said it, I thought, okay, you work on this small little, just the counters, just that. No, there's no just. Oh my God. As you said, ecosystem. Oh my, there's so much. How big of a team do you work with, just like within that sphere of?
Well, that's a interesting question. So we have had some attrition, and that means that we have had people kind of go into a different team, or they moved externally. So it goes when you're in corporate environment. It's very, very normal, to be honest. And so right now it's literally me and one other designer, but our team would typically be 7 designers right now. So I'm basically holding up the fort of a lot of that space. And typically, I don't know if you want to get into that now of like the teams, that how they break down, but I mean, typically you're partnered with a product manager and a engineering team for like a specific space that you're in. So I basically work with like, I want to say 4 product managers across all of these spaces. And within that, I mean, it starts breaking down into like 20 to 30 engineers. I mean, like it's a lot. Yeah. So typically you want to find the balance of like the communication mechanisms that you use, and also just cadence of meetings, etc. Because as you can imagine, it can snowball really fast,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
How important
So
is, I mean, I know it's important. How important is like, how much of that is a multi-step process, and how important is it keeping track of the process? Like, is it
yeah,
just everything?
process is critical. Like if you don't have mechanisms set in place, you will very quickly see how difficult it is to just get anything done. You know, it's super important. And I think that that's something that, you know, you want to learn, or that you don't typically learn in school. You learn it when you're working, but you can, teaching yourself how to be organized within your own, like what you're able to do, that's key, because you can do that now. And
Did you
once
hear
you,
that, students? Did you hear it? Did you hear it? Okay, go ahead.
yeah, so if you pull in, you know, that understanding, you can start to be able to influence your teams on how you can best, you know, have best practices as you're going about moving things. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of meetings, and it's a lot of mechanisms to track what you're doing. But then, you know, on the design side, it's like file management. Like, am I as simple as like, do I have a master file? Am I breaking these down per page of different areas of the experience? Am I naming the layers? Like, it's literally stuff like that that can make like a huge difference, because it's not the fact of you're the only designer that will ever work on this ever. Like, you'll go to another team and someone's going to get your file. You know what I mean? So it's like
Mhm.
you have to think about stuff, because people are going to remember like, oh, that designer, like they screwed this file up, and that stuff follows you in a corporate world. So it's just something to like think about.
Yes, yes, yeah. And even if, for those in the listening, even for those way back in the ancient world in print days, I mean, it's the same thing though. If you give someone a crappy file, it's either way. A crappy file is a crappy file, and people remember. They remember that. It's like, if you can't keep track of that, what else can't you keep track of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like exactly that.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the difference between, like, if you just had to explain to someone who knows generally, like the basic designers, what's the difference between UI and UX? So interface and experience. How have you worked in both throughout the years?
Yeah, so UX is really going to be based around kind of think of it like the skeleton of the body, right? It's like the structure, whether it's the architectural information, like the hierarchy of what we want to showcase to a user, or it's the path of which we can make an assumption that the user is going to go through a flow. So mapping out that flow, and what we think, and a lot of what we think hopefully is based on research that we've conducted, UX research, working with a researcher, or you're conducting it yourself. And so you use those things to inform how you want to map out an experience, and how you think about extraneous scenarios that could pop up in the experience, and how do those things, like how does the user route through those. So that thinking is the UX side of it, and how you visually showcase that and the skin of it for like the human, that's the UI. And thinking about like, okay, we see in the UX is they got from A to B to C. The UI is like, how do we visually showcase them getting from that in a digital experience, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally makes sense to me. And I'm glad that, yay, that's what I thought it was. Yeah. Like, it's not even teaching.
and, and to that point, you were talking about like, you have to kind of think of it in this way. If we're talking about like roles specifically, like, oh, I'm job searching and I see UX designer, or I see UI designer, or then I see product designer. So as of like the past few years, product design is kind of the like a culmination of UX and UI, like very heavily. with the addition of product design is kind of this full holistic designer. Like they can research, they can do interaction design, they can do the UX, they can do the UI, they know how to do prototyping. Like you basically can do all these things. Now we're not asking you to be an engineer to like code, but like having an understanding of like how the code would work in terms of you thinking about doing design, thinking about like limitations and things like that. But product designers, like they are like almost a unicorn in what they do. Like they can do it all. You know what I mean? UX, you are like a specialized focused around UX, and UI, you're pretty much doing like you're creating design systems, you're creating patterns, or you are taking someone's wireframes and you're then putting visuals on top of them. So that's kind of how they break down, and what you'll find, and likely moving forward, it's a lot of product designer will be kind of that main role that people are going to be looking for, i.e. meaning you want to be super well-rounded and marketable. That was like very critical for me and how I kind of moved up.
I have so many questions from that. Okay, so first of all, how much code do you think is necessary to know? I mean, it's always good if you know some, but how much coding?
It's really going to depend on where you work and kind of like what they're deeming the role to be. But I would say for the most part, you do not need to know code. Like you need to know how to work with engineers. You need to know how to communicate. You need to know how to partner and collaborate. That's what you need to learn when it comes to coding, because they are going to say that they can't do something the way you've designed it. So you then need to understand, how do I communicate and work with them to find the bridge, that gap of what the tech limitation is, to still advocating for the user and getting a good experience out there. So like if someone spits out some code at me, I'm not going to know necessarily what they're talking about, right? But I also still like, I can go into the inspect tool and I can kind of mess with some stuff if I need to figure something out. Like it's that kind of stuff. But no one's going to be like, hey, I need you to code stuff, because that's not my role to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
But say you're at a startup, maybe they are thinking that you're going to do that, because you're welcome to startup life, guys. You gotta be scrappy. So I've worked in those small startups and I've worked in corporate, and you have to wear multiple hats in each version of those workplaces. But in the startup, you might have to. It is a lot more likely that you could have to really dig into that code. But I would say overall, don't expect for them to be like, hey, you're going to code the app or you're going to code the website, because there's going to be an engineer to do that. Like you're there to map out the flows, create the design of it, and partner. It's all about the partnership and the communication. That's what's key there.
So what I said, I have so many questions. So then what do you think how did your Bachelor of Fine Arts inform what you did when you began, or even now? And then also you went back and got your Master's of Science in Human Computer Interaction.
Yeah.
You graduated this year, didn't you?
Yeah, in May.
Right. So let's start with the BFA.
So hold on, what was the question? Sorry.
I don't know. I just remember there was a dance at the end. So let's start with when you were first beginning, how did or does now the Bachelor of Fine Arts inform what you did, knowing that for the students who are listening, it was very, very close to the graphic design degree, but you also all of the studio core, all of that art history of graphic design, all of that is the same. So
yeah. So are we speaking specifically to UX? Because my experience was kind of different in that I didn't jump right into UX.
Right. No, I don't mean specifically to UX. I mean your path, first of all.
Yeah. So if we think back to when I had my BFA in graphic design, so when I jumped into it, it was actually very relevant because I went into creative branding and I went into advertising, and we were heavy in that, like within the design degree of what I was doing back then. So it was really relevant for me. I mean, I knew how to do like illustrations. I knew creative branding. Like that was a big push for me when I was in my career. Now, where I struggled was we weren't like heavy in web design at the point when I was in school, I believe. And so I taught a lot of that myself, but what I utilized like my visual design skills that I was getting, and like my thinking about type and thinking about like headers and body copy and the proximity of that, and that still interplays into what you do, even what I do now. And so I would say like that was what was influencing me from the degree on the immediacy, was like those intense visual design skills. And is why I'm such a strong visual designer now. Now what was missing and what I did a lot of learning is heavily the UX side of it, like, to be totally honest. And a lot of that is like things that you can learn just by doing. Like you really just kind of got to do it, and you're going to mess up. And you have to be like okay with messing up, even though you're not, and you're gonna have a panic attack, and it's fine. Like it's gonna happen. So
by the way, for all of you listening, another reason why Matt is so good is because he is a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes, and he is hard on himself. Okay, carry on. Yes.
but really though, like teaching yourself and looking up resources, going to talks like this, talk with real designers, like that is truly how you can learn. And my biggest piece of advice is do things, make things, put them out there in the world, post them on your LinkedIn, talk to people, network your ass off. Like that is how I got to where I got, because I talked to people all the time, and I would do it primarily from my computer. And even now that's the norm now. We didn't have a pandemic back then. So it's like, now it's so easy to do that, with the thought that there's also probably like hundreds of thousands more people doing that now also. So what are you going to do that's going to stand out from other people? Like you just have to think about that stuff. I went on a tangent there, but
it was a perfect tangent. It was great. No, and all those things you just said. Yes, that is. And by the way, for those of you listening, yes, that's why you should be involved in the local ad fed. You should be in AIGA. You should be in, actually our AIGA is a lot. Anyway, yeah, any other groups for those who really want to go into UI UX, with the UX side of things, talk to Professor Joe. He can tell you what's around. All right. So, sorry, there's some people in the waiting room, but I've already begun, so I cannot let them in. Anyway, oh my gosh, lots more questions here. Let's see. How do you suggest, you started talking about networking. So way back when you were a baby in 2014, were you scared to network then, or were you just never scared of that sort of stuff? You walk into a room with people you don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was definitely nervous. And I mean, I still get like some social anxiety, right? But I think what it is like, you have to kind of utilize what does make you comfortable. Like for the most part, all of my networking that I've done has been like literally on LinkedIn, or I would straight up email people. Cold emailing, I mean, I don't know if I would 100% recommend it now, but it works. I mean, but I would say LinkedIn, utilize LinkedIn. Like seriously, I advocate for it. Like every time we talk, I'm like, get on LinkedIn, because it's just so good. And I've gotten so many like conversation starters. I know so many directors in the business just from talking and just doing things, like if I do a lot of like game design for fun, and I'll post it on my LinkedIn. And I've talked to all the people at Fortnite, the people at League of Legends and Valorant, like Epic Games, like all of them, like they see my work, and I connect with them, and I say, hey, if there's ever any positions, blah, 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 like I've interviewed with Fortnite before. So it's like, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And it's literally just email, just talking to them. So just don't ever doubt yourself. And honestly, fuck it. Like, just do it. You know what I mean?
Who cares? Exactly.
Like
And by the way, for those of you listening, don't worry, when you have professional practice with me, you will have a LinkedIn presence and you will learn to use, and you will also, you will learn how to do a cold email. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
like like when you were growing up, yours was cold email. Way back, mine was a cold phone call. A phone call.
Yeah.
God, who does that?
Yeah. But
Anyway,
it really does make a huge difference. Just networking and talking to people and say, hey, I'm interested, or, hey, I want to get into this field. I don't know how. Like, is there any, like, I did that so much when I was first starting out, and now people are emailing, like they're messaging me that stuff. And so it's just like, that's just, don't be worried if no one's thinking like, oh my God, like this dumb student, like no one thinks that. Like, they are more than likely happy to talk to you. Like, I like to give advice and I like to tell people, hey, yeah, you should do this, etc. So like, don't ever feel like stressed out by it. And if you do, write it out on a notepad, what you want to say, copy it, paste it, run away. Like, that helps with the anxiety.
yes. So those things you were talking about, that you like giving advice and you like mentoring, that sounds like a teacher. Huh. So tell me about this education stuff you've thought about.
Yeah, so I definitely am wanting to do some kind of like teaching in regard to UX. And like I was telling Nikki, I had a teaching position, an adjunct position at the University of Arkansas to teach their UX course. And that's, how I got that? From networking, just talking to the dean. Literally just talking to him for a year and saying, hey, is there anything you ever need? And eventually it works. So
how often did you talk to the dean? Did you email? Did you call? Did you LinkedIn? And how often did you?
LinkedIn and email, and honestly, maybe once every like 6 months or so. Like, I would just give a kind of quick talk, and he knew that I was interested. And I went to it when I worked at Movista before Amazon. It was kind of like career talks, and so I went to one of those, and so he like knew me from that. And that's just participating in events, like, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
It's just stuff like that. But just think of how small that was and how fast that snowballed to a paying job that they were just going to pay me to teach students.
And just so
So
you guys know, it's not, you can't just wander in and get a teaching job at a university. That doesn't, so
yeah.
that's a big deal. That's a really big
Yeah.
deal.
So it obviously, like, as I was telling you, my schedule, it shifted. So I'm not able to do it now, but I don't think like that it will happen. It will happen in the right time, probably next year at some point. But still, that's a amazing like door that's opened up that I'm excited about.
And when the reason you had to say, I'm so sorry I had to not teach this semester, is because my
Right.
job with one of the largest companies in the world, that job, I had, my schedule shifted doing the stuff that you want me to teach about. Like, wow. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's a lesson in working in a corporate job, is that it's unpredictable at times. We got reorged, which is basically when they shift the infrastructure of an organization that you're in. And sometimes your manager changes. And, when your manager changes, if you had like an agreement of like, I'm actually going to be off this day and this day to teach, the new manager might come in and say that isn't going to work. And you have to, this is your full-time job. So you have to be like, okay.
Yeah. These guys give me benefits. I think I'll do what they say.
Yeah. And that doesn't typically happen like all the time. Like, it does happen though. And it's not anything like super weird. Like, it does happen. It's just unfortunate timing, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the teaching stuff, I'll definitely do it though. And I'll obviously continue to do these discussions. I think they're really beneficial for students and they're just fun to do.
Well, thank you. We're very glad that you are doing it. What do you think? Let's see, what is my stuff here? Gosh, so many questions. By the way, was your graduate degree at Iowa State, was that online, or did you move for a while?
All online. Yeah.
Okay.
All.
And at first I'm like, oh, it was all online. Then I'm like, let's see. And what were you studying? Computer interaction. Like,
yeah.
of course.
Yeah, no, it's a good degree. It's like one of the, and I guess just for everyone's like knowledge, the a master's in HCI is kind of like the staple if you're wanting to go into like product design or UX design. Not saying it's like necessary, but it is like when jobs are looking, like if they see that, then they're like, okay, like they know what they're doing in that field at least. And so those are good like entry if you're getting into an entry level and you're thinking, hey, I want to do some more, education, that one will get you in the door.
For to get into a Master's of Science program, do you need to have like worked for a little bit, or can you go straight from a bachelor's into that?
You can go straight in generally.
Wow.
Yeah. But you have to obviously apply. Like I had to get multiple recommendations. I had to write something. You have to have
I think I gave you one of. Did I give you a
I'm
recommendation?
pretty sure you did. Yeah. So you have to, and it depends on the school, and
Yeah.
and
Iowa
I'd
State is
recommend.
not shabby, so good
Yeah,
job.
it's a
Real
good
good
one for
job.
HCI. So definitely like just Google like top HCI schools, and you can aim high, aim middle, and aim high.
Exactly. Let's see here. What did that for the human computer interaction, like what, it's a pretty self-explanatory, sounds like, degree, but like what was your favorite part of that? What was your, and how much of it is behavioral psychology? Is it demographics? Is it psychographics? Like what all is it?
Yeah, it's like all that, honestly. Like you learn so much about like the psychology on like people's decision making and how technology is utilized in that decision making. And I mean, be ready to read because you're going to be reading a lot. And
There's graduate school for you.
yeah, it's just reading and writing. I mean, but the cool thing is like actually in this field, you do actually build things. So like my favorite class was doing augmented reality and virtual reality. So like I was able to build that, but Iowa State is like top of like VR and AR and stuff. So that was a staple. So that I actually did a lot of coding, and I did a lot of like building it. But I built AR apps on my phone and like made like VR like apps and stuff. So that was super cool to me because I had no idea how to do that. And so you just kind of like learn. So that was my favorite thing about it. But yeah, it's a ton of like learning about behavioral for sure, and then the psychology behind it, and then the technology side. If you're like actually executing something, like how do you actually do it? So it was a lot of fun and definitely learn a lot.
By the way, you also, we saw on your LinkedIn and on your Dribble page and stuff that, so game design and stuff, is it the game design part that you love? Is it the character building? What part of that do you love that you just do in your spare time?
Yeah, I love taking games that are existing and saying, how can I improve upon them? And so that revolves around rethinking the UX and then putting the UI on top of it. I personally love the UI part of game design because that's the visual part of it. That's the fun part of it, right? And so for me, I love to be able to redesign that user interface on like how I would do a situation or a specific part of the experience. So that's what I focus on a lot when I'm redoing games and thinking about game design in that sense. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun.
So even though, and we're gonna act like Amazon doesn't hear this right now, but like, so like for real, if like Fortnite or somebody called you up and was like, hey, come on over.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed for Fortnite. I got
Right?
all the way through the interview process. I didn't get it, obviously, but I still like those connections are so critical. That's why I always say like go interview. It doesn't matter, go interview. Even if you're like, I'm not qualified because I don't have game design experience, but I got all the way to the very end of an interview for a gaming company. So it's just like, and you learn a lot in interviews, and they get less and less stressful as you do them and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open. I've interviewed at Riot Games also for Valorant, and I maybe I'm interviewing soon. So who knows? So we'll see.
Hmm. What kind of interview advice do you, just for all interviewing, what kind of basic interview advice would you tell students?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like it does depend on the company. So if we're talking like top tech companies, like Amazon has like a specific way of interviewing, the same that Facebook has a specific way of interviewing. I've interviewed at Facebook and Google as well. So like they all do different ones. But there's kind of like a singular thread of like how they do a tech interview for a UX or product designer. You're going to be faced with like very similar situations, but their questions might vary. Like their behavioral questions could vary. But I would say like be ready to have stories that speak to like examples of questions that they're going to ask you. So if they're asking you like a challenging time you faced when you wanted to have a feature built that your engineering team just couldn't execute, how did you handle that? Like it's like that kind of stuff, thinking about what's something that I can surface for this interview that's going to get them to see how I think, what is my process when I'm designing, and like how do I handle conflict, what's my collaboration style like. That's a lot of what people are looking at you about, because the reality is like we look more about what is your decision making process like, and how do you work with people? Are you a culture fit? Like what would you be like on a team? Because you can teach skills like those design skills, like you obviously have to have some level of it, but if we're talking like you're right out of college, do not worry if you have portfolio work that you feel is like studenty, because it's like they literally don't care. Like they want to know if you're a good culture fit. Obviously, have work that you're proud of in your portfolio, because that showcases, that comes through when you're talking to people. So I'd say like that's the biggest thing, is to just focus on that.
So like part of that is just being, I mean, it's who you don't want to fake who you are, but like
Right.
being able to just take a breath and come in there and smile and not be a butthead and not be a butthead and oh yeah, not be a butthead and be nice, right?
Yeah, like literally we just want to see like if I'm, if I'm thinking back, like if I'm looking to hire like a junior designer, like right out of college, I'm looking at like, how open are they to taking criticism? How open are they to taking feedback that I give on a portfolio? Like, are they going to get flustered from it? Because that's something that I'm not going to be looking for. I'm looking for someone that's like super open to getting feedback. Like if something's wrong, they're like, oh, perfect. Like, can you give me an example of what can make this better? Like, that's the type of people you want to hire. So you can't come in with like a shitty attitude and just like thinking that like think you're the shit, but don't fully own that you're, you know what I mean? So you want to exude that in the nicest way possible.
Yes.
So, but yeah,
Have
just be
confidence, but
confident.
don't have too much confidence, but still have
Yeah,
enough.
right. Be humble. But yeah, I would say like right out of school, like, you know, utilize your projects that you're doing in your classes, but also like make stuff. When I got out of school, I used projects from school, but I also just made things, and I sent them out. Like this was back in the ye old days, and we would send some stuff like an actual package, like, but I mean, it works. Like it literally caught people's attention. Like they were like, oh, it's not just a digital copy. It's like physical pieces. So just something to think about, as you're marketing yourself. Marketing yourself is like key. I mean, it
Oh
is
yeah.
literally critical.
Oh yeah. Which is why when you guys have professional practice with me, yeah. When you was in 2014, your portfolio was still its own independent study, right? Or did you repress all of that anyway?
What do you, like,
There are co-requisites now. Like you have to take an portfolio as a class where we meet and there's professional practice. It was called branding when you were there.
yeah, we had branding, and we had like our branding showcase, which was
Yeah.
our own brand,
Right.
essentially.
But your portfolio class was still an independent study, right? Where there was only some of you and we met sometimes and most of it was done on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different now. I mean, I guess most of
Okay.
it's still independent study, but oh, it's okay. We got some questions in the chat here. Let me see. Were you in AIGA in college? You were, weren't you?
I think so. Yeah. You
Yeah.
basically, yeah, I was in it I was either in it like half of my degree, or like but I don't remember if it was the beginning or the end, and it was probably the end of it,
Yeah.
honestly, because that's when you're like, oh shit.
Oh, my resume. Wait a second.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think I was.
Cool. It was, and yeah, that's what I was pretty sure you were. And were you on a board member, or were you just?
No, I think I was just attending them, and any events that we have, just go into those, especially any networking stuff. Just making sure you're going to those.
Did you ever participate in the student Addies for the AdFed in
Yep.
Northeast Arkansas?
Yeah, I won a couple. I don't
That's what I
remember
thought.
for, but I don't remember, but I won.
You've won so many things since then. It was a long time ago.
But the Addies are fun. Definitely do the Addies. It's honestly just fun. Just do it.
Yeah, right. And you guys, you students, you're so good, and there's so little competition, and just go in. But you would be good even if there was competition.
I say that, and then I think about the time frame of when I was like that art student though, and I was like, oh, I gotta do all these things, and I gotta build out I gotta cut it out. And so I mean, I feel you on that, but you definitely should do it because you will not regret it, like in the long run.
Let's see. Let's see. What do you have any advice on creating an app or products? That might be a little bit too broad. I'm not sure about that. I think we might have covered that earlier. Do you have any advice on creating apps?
Like if we're talking about like concept work, then yeah, I mean, that's all I did when I started out was basically create concept work, which is not real, obviously. So it's like you basically come to a problem, or you have a problem a design problem, and you're like, okay, this is the design problem statement. I'm going to make a mobile app for that design problem statement. And then you design out the UX, design out the UI. And I don't know if we put my Dribble on there or not, but if they go to my Dribble and they scroll all the way down, like literally that is all made up. And that's how I learned how to do that stuff. Like, that's just all it is. Like, use inspiration, go to Dribble, type in, or just go to product design. Literally, what are people doing? Replicate it and then try and make it better. Like, that's literally how I learned how to do things in a better way. And eventually you get enough kind of behind you that you start producing good work that you feel good about, that you can speak on, and then post that, get engagement, talk to people, and it just snowballs from there.
There we go. Let's see. How easy was your transition from college to a real world job? Or in other words, what did you find most challenging?
Everything was hard. I mean, really, like, so my first job was at a startup. And so like we were doing like everything. I mean, I was doing like the photography, I was doing the web stuff, I was doing the branding, like, I mean, but with that being said, like I was able to work on really cool stuff, like the Ozark Brewery, Onyx Coffee Lab, all that branding. Like I worked on all that stuff. So yeah, and that was my first job out of college. So it's like, that's the stuff that, jettisons you to get your name out there, and you learn so much in your first year of working, and you're gonna cry and feel bad, and you're gonna be like, oh my God, like I suck. And like, honestly, like maybe you do. And you know what? But
hopefully
forever though. Because I did stuff that I was like, I literally did some terrible stuff at the beginning. And I look back on it now and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm so glad that happened though, because you get so much better, and you will not get better unless you fail. I mean, that's just like the honest truth. So like you cannot be crippled by your fear of doing bad, because it's you're going to hinder yourself as a designer, you know.
Yep.
Like aim to do well, and if you fail, it's okay. Like they know you are a recent graduate of your degree. Like they don't expect you to do and know everything. So it's really just that.
Part of what they want you for, aside from being cheap when you're first out, is that they want your fresh blood. They want that newness. So yeah,
Yeah. And I
absolutely.
think one of the challenging things for me personally was taking feedback. Like I was really defensive when I would get feedback, and that is super off-putting to companies and just your other designers in general on your team or your manager. Like you just need to be cognizant of the fact, like they are trying to make the work better. It's not a personal attack on you, even though design feels personal, and that's why we feel like that. It's not something that they don't think like you're the worst thing ever. Like they just want to make a better product or a better app, and everyone has a valid viewpoint. So it's just like something to remember as you go into your first job, to not you be so critical on yourself, but also don't feel like they're being so critical on you. They're being critical about a design because they're trying to meet a business objective. It's all business, you know.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of businesses, do you like corporate better than startups?
It has its pros and cons. Like I have a lot more resources available to me at a corporate environment, and
Oh
you
yeah.
get paid a lot more, but
Mhm.
you have
Fact.
trade-offs. Like, I was a lot closer with my colleagues in a startup environment because it's just six of you trying to make something, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's really scrappy, and it's really fun and new. And when you're going into a corporate environment, those processes and procedures, like those are in place, and they've been in place for a long time, and they might not always be great, but they've been in place a long time. And so as much as you might want to change the world with it, it's going to be hard to do that. So you just have to like really, it's pros and cons of each one. But for the most part, I love working on large scale problems, and I do that at a corporate job. So I do like that part of it.
Did you ever do any, or did you do any freelance work? I know there's the game art stuff that you do that's for yourself, but like way
Yeah.
back at the beginning, did you
Yeah,
do
I
any
did a lot of
freelance?
freelance. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did a lot. I did a lot of like web design stuff, and like branding. Uh, I haven't done freelance stuff. I'm just too busy to do it anymore. But
Yeah.
like when I started out, it's a really good way to do it. It's to freelance, and I would get a lot of freelance from like jobs I had, and they would still reach out to do some stuff. So just don't ever like burn a bridge.
Oh, that's for fact. Fact.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Never ever. Also, everyone seems to know everyone and you'll mess everything up.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If you ever could open your own business and be like, I know that's not the same as freelancing all the time. You have your own business, but do you like that? Like, I know a lot of students who just want to go right on out and freelance and never go work for anybody. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if you have the experience that you can showcase, that you are able to like accomplish what that potential client is wanting, like I say, go for it. But also like don't put your eggs in one basket, right? Like you need to ensure that you're able to afford what you're doing. Like, so for me, like it was helpful to kind of like get your foot in there. Sometimes, like I know you shouldn't work for free, and you definitely shouldn't work for free, but sometimes a little thing here and there when you just started, I'm talking like you're literally just out of school, is not that bad. Because I always thought of it as it's helping me. I was like, I'm getting some work out of this. So you can think about it like that. But yeah, I mean, if you have the will and the means to do it, and you can actually go do it, then go for it. I mean, I remember someone that was either a grade below, I think it was a grade below me, but he did like a whole t-shirt design thing. He was really good, and he's been doing his thing, and he's doing great. So it's like you just gotta, it really just depends. It's like about the talent, and it's about the will, really.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Oh, and I'm like, see, the time passes so quickly. Oh my gosh, it's 6:48. I've got a couple questions on here, and then I'm going to turn off the recording so I can have all the students come into the room and turn on their cameras and talk to you a little bit, but I
Sure.
can't record them because of law and stuff. So let's see. Yeah, you're in education. You know what FERPA is. Anyway, are there any types of certificates or licenses that you would recommend getting, or if they're even necessary?
I would say they're not necessary, but if you want to get them, like Udemy has really good courses that you can take for either for free, but I think it gives you a certificate, but they have good courses around UX, like in UI, or even if it's software, like design software related stuff, like Udemy is a good one. I'd probably have to like look up some stuff, but there's definitely tutorial based things that you should do, but I'd say it's less of you having like a certificate, or like, I know you can do like General Assembly is like a UX program that you can do. You don't need to do that. It's great for people that were like, maybe they were in a completely different field and they want to get into UX, great option. But for the students, I don't think so.
What about the IBM stuff? Like they have a ton of practitioner stuff. Do you know any, are you any of that or no?
I don't know much about it, but I do know that they have it. But I mean, my belief is like, it doesn't hurt to do
Yeah,
stuff.
might as
Like
well.
for me, I like candidly, I did not need to go get that master's degree, but I wanted to do that for me. And so if you feel like you want to do it, then do it, but don't do it if you feel like it's your, well, I can't get a job until I get this, because that's definitely not the case. It's about your experience and your behavioral and communication skills.
There it is. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to yeah. I mean, aside from someone not getting a job because of, economy going to crap or a pandemic, aside from that, putting that over there, the vast majority of it is, yeah, if you're not getting a job, it might be exactly the work that you have, the experience that you've had, sometimes a crappy attitude. That is can really, really hurt. Let's see, someone put, also just for fun, if there's time, have you watched Arcane on Netflix?
No, but I know I need to, because everyone keeps telling me to watch it. So at some point I'm gonna watch it because I heard it's good.
See, I don't even know. I just have to go on Google that
It's
later.
a League of Legends show. Yeah, so
Oh,
Riot made it.
I gotcha. Okay, I am going to stop the recording, but don't go anywhere. Let
Right back,
me
hold on.
see. Maybe I will. Okay, pausing.